of the Rebuilding of a Sustainable Economy series organized by Euroconsumers. My name is Alberto Alemanno. I'm a professor of European law in Paris and a founder of the Good Lobby. Today, we are going to be discussing together whether and how can artificial intelligence power the green transition. It is a big question, but also a timely question, since we have all heard yesterday the President of the European Commission in her State of the Union address to commit to a new target when it comes to the carbon emissions, which will be authorized from 2030 onwards. This is a major development from the previous target, which will certainly show a new commitment to a low carbon growth model, which will certainly have major consequences and will all be keeping busy us and certainly changing our society. So it is against this backdrop that we will be considering today whether and how AI can play a positive role in allowing that green transition to actually happen and to lead us in the long term in a neutral carbon world into a sustainable economic model. Needless to say, we are all aware AI has become an area of strategic importance. Every day, the newspapers' headlines remind us this, but they also show that it could be a key driver of economic development. But obviously, the jury is still out on how and what kind of development we may be seeing when AI will become a major force for our economy and major transformation. As you will be here today, Euroconsumers just released a survey which suggests that a growing number of citizens feel the potential of AI to actually play a positive role in the green transition. We already know that some applications exist, probably more than what we are currently aware of, and they suggest that AI can actually make a difference. Think of smart filters tackling pollution, smart grids controlling consumption of energy or water, or even alerting imminent climate events like floods or landslides. The question and challenge that we'll be discussing today is how can actually AI today contribute to such a goal? How can realistically be possible? What kind of role companies, governments, consumer organizations, and consumers themselves can actually play in such a transition? To discuss these issues, we have a panel made of leading actors representing different interests and perspectives of the current debate. We have Lucilla Scioli, who is Director of AI and Digital Industry at DG Connect at the European Commission. We have Stefano Quintorelli, who is a member of the AI High-Level Expert Group at the European Commission. We have Diego Chuli, who is a Public Policy Manager at Google. We have Iban Garcia del Blanco, who is a member of the European Parliament from the Socialists and Democrats. And we have Els Bruggeman, who is Head of Policy and Enforcement at Euroconsumers. So the plan for today is to start with a kickoff presentation by Els Bruggeman based on the white paper on how artificial intelligence can power Europe's green and digital transition. And then we're going to move to a panel that will last approximately 40 minutes before we're going to open up for discussion. So let me kick off this session by saying, Els, we are in your hands. If you could present your major take on this specific issue, it would be a nice way to set the scene. To you, Els, please.
Thank you, Alberto. Actually, the paper was mentioning how consumer-centered AI can power the green transition. Well, basically, it was inspired by two main trends, two main tendencies that we have seen in the post-COVID-19 era. If we can talk about the post area, because unfortunately, apparently, we're still very much in it. But having that said, I think what COVID-19 has already shown us is that there's an increased importance and maybe also an increased dependency of all things digital. I think we all need to acknowledge where would we have been in the last couple of months if we didn't have these digital tools and solutions. What's also becoming more clear and more accepted by a large majority is that the recovery of COVID-19 needs to be a sustainable one. We need to rebuild society and economy in a more sustainable way, and we need to speed up the transition. Now, for us as Euroconsumers, these two things are not separate, quite the contrary. We are very much convinced that one actually reinforces the other, and that AI is a critical enabler of driving the green transition. Now, this was already expressed in our manifesto for a consumer-centered and consumer-empowering green transition, which was approved by tomorrow. But it's that important for us that we decided to explore it a bit more into depth. Now, we know from survey data, we have conducted surveys in our countries, we know that consumers see the potential of AI. And when we're talking about potential, it's not only predicting, for example, traffic jams or crime or health issues, it's also when it comes to sustainability. Over 42% of consumers feel that AI can help them, can help us achieve a more sustainable environment. So basically, this is an open window of opportunities that we need to grasp, and we need to scale up to face the challenge of a more sustainable environment. Now, when we have a closer look at what AI can do for sustainability, but more specific for consumers to empower them to become some kind of an accelerator in this green transition, then the examples are many. You already indicated a few of them in the introduction, but AI could be all the data that's collected by AI. It's very important to improve energy efficiency. It can, for example, identify the household appliances in your house that consume the most or that have issues that would indicate a shorter lifespan. It could, for example, indicate when there's a problem with the cooling system of your refrigerator. It could also help you to switch more automatically from power to solar consumption. But also when it comes to food, for example, if you have dynamic pricing, food has a due date. With dynamic pricing, based on AI, based on the data, you could put this food on sale, food that is nearing the due date, you could put it on sale at cheaper prices. You could also use it to create, for example, smart labels that provide the environmental impact of food. But also when it comes to mobility, for example, it could match the demand and the supply side of electric vehicle charging and optimize fuel efficiency. So the picture I'm drawing here is actually rather appealing and offers a lot of opportunities and it's very ambitious. However, it should also be clear that none of this potential will ever be reached if you don't have consumers on board, if you don't have consumers that trust it. And unfortunately, this is also a conclusion we need to draw from the data from our survey results. The surveys that we have conducted, they do not only show that consumers see a huge potential in AI, it also shows there's a significant lack of trust on their behalf. They don't trust their data is safe, that their privacy is respected. On the contrary, they feel that there might be more abuses. They don't feel in control. They don't feel authorities are in control. They don't think it's clear that who is accountable when something goes wrong. And they don't feel that there's no risk of discrimination. And on top of that, consumers also indicated that they're not satisfied every time with the added value that AI is currently delivering to them. So if we want to make it work, if we want AI work, and especially for the green transition, this is something we need to create. We need to create a robust framework that enables this trust, this security, this fairness. And to that regard, legislation and regulation is very important, and this is ongoing and currently very well covered by our umbrella organization, BUG. But to that regard, I also want to reach out to the business side. Why wait if we can start now? It's in both of our interests. It's in your interest that you have an AI that can flourish, and it's in our interest. So why not start and with going ahead, creating this robust framework and creating the added value that consumers actually need. Let's go ahead with creating more data privacy, data minimization, portability, open data, but also acknowledging the value of the data that is delivered to them by the consumers. Let's go ahead with creating clear rules on accountability, with control, with transparency, and let's go ahead with creating something that consumers really need and really helps them. So it's It's clear that just like in the green transition, we need consumers to be in the center of it. I think it also shows that when it comes to AI, we need a consumer-centered AI to make it work. And that's why we also want to reach out, because we're in this together, and we are convinced that together we can build some great things.
Thank you, Els. Thank you very much for setting the scene and giving us some illustrations of what AI could actually mean and how it could potentially contribute to such a goal of green transition and a more sustainable carbon-free economy. You have highlighted the paradox of consumers who want to give it a chance to AI, but at the same time, they're a bit reticent of the AI applications. So this is really at the center of our conversation today. However, before getting to that, which is the most difficult part of the conversation, perhaps let's step back and try to figuring out whether from a more technological and commercial perspective, AI is currently ready to play such a role, facilitating the green transition. I would be very grateful if Stefano Quintarelli, as an expert, could give us a bit of a sense of the feasibility of AI contributing today to such a green transition. We have heard about some illustrations in certain fields. Can you give us a bit of a sense of how much we can realistically expect from AI technological development in playing such a role, Stefano?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. Hello to everybody. Yes, I think that in the upcoming years, what is going to happen is that AI will not be such a buzzword as it is today, and it will permeate, it will be across, it will reap its benefits across all industries, across all environments, across all applications, etc. It's a different way to make software. It's a different way to do software. It's a different way that allows us to do other kind of applications that traditional algorithmic software could not allow us to. And so that will enter into this, will allow us to tackle problems entering the space of perception and correlation and forecasting. And all these three applications that we already do them in a certain way with algorithmic techniques, but it's very approximate, it's very rough as tools. Thanks to machine learning, this will adapt, will evolve, and will let us do more and more detailed perception and forecasting. Thanks to this, we are going to be able to tune the needs of every industry and to allow to the actual inputs, to the outputs, to the inputs, allowing us to decrease the excess inputs we use in all our productions, be it human time, be it agriculture, I don't know, chemical substances for in any space, being it in the delivery, being it in moving the things around, etc. So really, we're not going even to perceive that there is AI, because AI is going to be a normal way to do things with computers that were previously we did in a very rough, more precise, and reducing all the waste, all the friction that every interaction along the value chains and in the different parts of the supply chains and the different elements. So it's you have to think.
We lost I think we lost Stefano. Apologies for that. We're going to try to find him again soon. Stefano was suggesting that AI will be soon ubiquitous. It will not necessarily be visible to the eye as it is not today. And my question now for Diego, coming from the industry, is how far we are from such a scenario. a scenario in which AI will be permeating our life to the point Stefano was describing? Diego.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Well,
yes.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me today. I really much agree with the description that Stefano was giving, and AI today really permeates our life. In particular, our lives as users of technological tools. When you search on Google, AI works for you. When you search for your images, AI works for you. Or when you are looking at a webinar using automatic translation in the subtitles, AI helps you. So that we are there. AI is part of our lives. We are exactly, as Stefan was explaining, in that passing phase. Until relatively few years ago, AI was something that was incorporated in your technological tool and provided to you by technology company to provide their services. I think we are now in the phase in which AI can really be for everyone, for every organization, for every company. Or as Stefan was saying, this new way of programming computers is not anymore the way that big companies and big techs use to program their services, but really a new and transformative way to change all the software that we are creating. Why is it so important for our panel today and for sustainability? Because basically what AI does very well is analyze a big amount of data to identify paths and to identify inefficiency and provide efficiencies. So in the very short term, I think, or actually to be strict and direct for your question, today for companies, tools to minimize their environment impact are available. AI tools are completely available and usable for companies, of course, and this is something we should always remember when we discuss in the tech bubble. So it's for me, is that when a technology is technically available, it doesn't mean that it's actually adopted by all the companies. So if you ask me the invention part, I think a lot has already been invented, is available. The challenge that we have to get together today, and the role of institutions and organizations as Euroconsumers have, is exactly to boost adoption on those technologies. I give you just a couple of examples. The first one is right from last Monday. Last Monday, Google announced a big commitment to become completely carbon-free by 2030. So it has to do with our own energy consumption. But as part of that announcement, there was another smaller announcement, if you want, that was almost not covered by the public debate, but we also announced that we are making publicly available for other companies and organizations the technology that has allowed us in the past to reduce by 30% our energy footprint through AI. So right now, a technology that has helped us to save energy in cooling our data center will be available for energy consumption reduction to any company. Another example has to do, for example, with, and this is not Google related actually, is I work with the Polytechnic of Milan in Italy on how AI impacts the manufacturing sectors. And we have discovered something really amazing. For example, in agriculture, just using data analysis and image recognition, you could automatically identify in agriculture which parts of the fields need more fertilizers or more water. And this could drive at savings in terms of fertilizer and water in the order of 80 to 90%. And similar savings apply when it comes to manufacturing or when it comes to the steels industry. So in a nutshell, there is a technological opportunity to dramatically improve reduce the environmental impact of the industry. This is something that from a technological standpoint is available. And of course, to achieve that, technology is not enough. That's the reason why it's so important, the bottom-up pressure. We have done an analysis on internal data, and consumers that have adopted smart thermostats in their houses have helped saving electronic energy for 35 billion kilowatt hour. That's more or less the energy consumption for 3 years of the city of San Francisco. So it's a great example of how our consumer decisions help improving, the environment by leveraging AI. I think we should do more to leverage consumers' role to push on companies for their transition.
Okay, thank you so much. It was extremely informative, and your illustrations, I think, speak by themselves. So you're basically saying the technology is there, it is already widely spread, is widely used, is already making a difference in terms of environmental gains, cutting consumptions, creating awareness, making more visible and observable what it wasn't in the past. So the question for me, which is somehow inevitable, is what is stopping this from actually happening? And now, Diego, you were saying, well, some other actors need to play a role. Companies alone won't be able to lead us. So perhaps we need to turn to Lucilla at the European Commission and to see what do you think in your diagnosis, in your various consultations, impact assessment, you see as stopping this from happening? What is preventing AI to go mainstream in allowing our societies to embrace a greener transition?
Hello, good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me. It was said earlier, it was highlighted in the very first introduction that lack of trust may be one of the main reasons why people are not fully embracing AI. It's true. To that, I would also add a certain element of skills, in the sense that when I talk about AI with people, I realize people don't really know what it is that we are talking about. Is it a software? Is it a special software? I mean, all the indications that Stefano gave us earlier are not really well known by the ordinary consumer, but not only by consumers, very often even businesses, the businesses that have to use or that could use AI to achieve better and greener outcomes, they're not aware that they can do that. So, and that is a lack of skills, in my opinion. So we are working on two levels. On the one hand, we are working with technology organizations called digital innovation hubs, which are partially funded by the European Commission, to help, in particular, small, medium enterprises to understand how they can use AI in their business. And of course, we are, from the European Commission, you know very well, we have very strong green objectives. And therefore, we obviously promote all those artificial intelligence applications that can have a positive impact on the environment. And as it was said earlier, these impacts happen in many sectors: energy, agriculture, but also transport. I was reading yesterday, there is an autonomous ship called Mayflower, like the Pilgrim's ship, that is going to be put in April next year. It's going to cross the Atlantic, and it's going to work with AI. It's going to be fully autonomous, using computer vision and all the rest, and it's going to be moved by the solar energy. So it is yet another application of AI to make our world a bit greener. For what concerns trust, we have presented a white paper recently addressing the so-called high-risk applications of artificial intelligence. So all those applications that may bring risk in terms of violating fundamental rights or violating safety rights that we have acquired in our societies in the European Union. And we will come forward next year with a proposal to address and introduce requirements to be able to check and address these high-risk applications before they're put on the market. But I mean, I can go more in detail on this if you like, but I just would like to make one more point that I think it was quickly made in the previous intervention, but I would like to highlight it. AI is very good in helping green applications, but AI, and in particular deep learning, uses a lot of energy. So I think we need also to put in place policies that help AI become more energy efficient. We are doing a certain amount of research for that, or supporting research for that, both in terms of optimization of the data or about computing power and chips for the next generation of AI. But we really have to consider the fact that the real limits to deep learning are the computational requirements, and those imply a certain amount of energy consumption. So we should also make efforts to become better in greening the artificial intelligence that we develop.
Thank you.
We'll stop here for the moment.
Yes, thank you, Lucilla. It was extremely useful to get a sense of what are the obstacles that are somehow stopping or limiting the potential of this technology to spread. You mentioned limited trust as it emerges from the Euroconsumer survey, which is driven also by limited literacy. That's why you're trying to tackle this issue. But also the paradoxical situation in which pushing for AI means also to push for an increase in the use of energy. So we also have to tackle this particular issue. Now that we have put on the table a few major societal issues, perhaps it is worth turning to Ivan, who is our political representative today, to get a sense of what you think we should do from a regulatory perspective in order to frame in the most possible way these different trade-offs that we are highlighting. Ivan.
Thank you very much. We are listening, in fact, amazing application of artificial intelligence, all the opportunities artificial intelligence would entail, but we have to make a balance, and my approach will be from a perspective of a legislator. It couldn't be in another way. So thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this panel. I'd like to touch some points, and I'm going to start on for me is so important, and some of my colleagues mentioned the concept of digital literacy. So AI and related technologies are instruments to contribute to the common good and to serve the general interest of citizens. In turn, citizens need the necessary digital understanding and skills to trust and embrace fully the opportunities of AI that offers in a myriad of fields within the digital society, from employment or to finance, from education to energy, from healthcare to environment. Just as quality education is a necessary component for the foundation of a successful society, our digital society will thrive with the deployment of a comprehensive digital literacy plan that includes digital skills as well as media literacy, data and privacy basic knowledge that goes hand in hand with a dynamic interaction with AI at all levels. A proper digital literacy plan should educate citizens on the role of AI in safeguard and fostering the of EU and the society they live in. I'm talking about the promotion of democracy, environmental sustainability, quality education, independent and free media and information, gender balance, and cultural and linguistic diversity. Safeguarding fundamental rights to secure consumers' trust. Consumer trust is a fundamental, something mentioned, it's a requirement for a smooth functioning of our digital society. To secure this trust when engaging in online processes, the EU must ensure that the consumer's fundamental rights are safeguarded with a legal framework that covers all aspects of our lives being impacted by AI and related technologies. This legal framework has to uphold fundamental rights, ethical aspects, legal safeguards, and liability, thus protecting our democratic societies and citizens and users and consumers, and therefore generating trust. With the ultimate goal to safeguard consumers' rights, union law related to product safety and product liability needs to be assessed and updated to fit into the new AI technologies. This review needs to be done in close consultation with citizens, civil and consumers organizations. I have the honor to serve as the reporter. Sorry, because I don't know what is happening with my camera, but sometimes is in this way. Okay, I'm here again. Have the honor to serve as the reporter of the European Parliament for the legislative initiative on the framework of ethical of AI, robotics, and related technologies. In my capacity of coordinating and shaping this work, I have reflected a fair amount of time seeking to harmonize with which ethical principles need to be complied with during the development, deployment, and use of artificial intelligence and related technologies within the Union. In my view, for the artificial intelligence to be ethical, it has to be a human-centered perspective. It must serve the best interest of the European citizens while safeguarding human autonomy, decision-making and agency, and allowing for full human oversight. It has to define high risk, technologies entailing a significant risk of breaching any ethical principle should be monitored by national supervisory authorities with a defined mandate and should be coordinated at the European level, just in order to avoid fragmentation. It has to be developed, deployed, and used in observance of key safety features concerning consistency, resilience, security, accuracy, explainability, disclosure, and reversibility. In addition, traceability and transparency must be guaranteed, and this is one of the ways in which national supervisory authorities will be able to ensure compliance as well as audit these technologies and ultimately ensure accountability for their output. It has to show value for human dignity, equal treatment for all, and adhere to the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. It has to contribute to progress and promote beneficial results in the interest of society by ensuring optimal social, environmental, and economic outcomes. It has to observe fully privacy principles. With regard to privacy and the use of biometric recognition technologies, both the GDPR and the Charter should be fully respected. It has to be guided by a proper governance system that guarantees compliance and ensure that the actions of European deployers, developers, and users are in line with the highest available standards, both at the EU at a national level. And finally, it has to protect alert launchers when reporting any breach of the ethical principles applicable to those technologies. For the subject matter of AI to power the green transition, that is the point of today, AI should be developed, deployed, and used in a manner that ensures optimal environmentally friendly outcomes and minimizing its environmental footprint impact during the life cycle of these technologies and across the entire supply chain in view of supporting the achievement of climate neutrality and circular economic goals in a manner that mitigates its general impact on natural resources, usage and energy consumption, waste production, carbon footprint, climate change, and environmental degradation. In this way, on their end, the member states and the European Union should encourage and promote research projects intended to provide solutions based on creative technologies intended to address waste production, carbon footprint, climate and environmental degradation. Currently, as I said, I am working on compromises to my report in the European Parliament and exchanging views with as many actors as possible. And I look forward to listening all the contributions and exchanging views with participants, as it is a responsibility towards our society to align the development of AI technologies with ethical values and principles that safeguard and promote the well-being of the youth. Thank you for your time, and I return to the control of the session to you, Alberto, and I look forward for the debate because many things have been raised, and I think it is worth doing this deep debate about it.
Thank you very much. If we sum up what we have been saying so far, and if I hear you well here, you're all saying that to unleash the potential of AI in promoting a green transition, we need consumers on board. We need to address many of their legitimate concerns. You mentioned many, ranging from privacy to energy consumption, low trust, limited literacy. All these issues make adherence and I would say acceptance of AI technology very problematic. So you mentioned major principles, abstract principles like human-centered, balancing, but obviously these principles need to be operationalized. So it would be very interesting to make a round now and to get a sense of how we can overcome this sentiment of being intrigued, being tempted to give it a chance to AI, but at the same time being reticent based on the current situation of the market in which AI has been powered very far away from the visibility, from the accountability that in our society we need in order to increase acceptance of new technology. So how we can overcome current sentiment? And perhaps we start from Stefano because we lost him when he was speaking. Please, Stefano.
Yes, thank you. Well, I missed a large part, a perfect storm. First, my computer decided to update at the beginning of the session, and then I had a problem with my Wi-Fi, so I'm now connected to my phone. Apologize, I have backup. No, the point I was making before is that in my view, AI is going to disappear, meaning that we don't think of computers anymore. It's obvious. AI will disappear. It will be another way of doing software that will be across all industry, across all elements of the value chain, across all segments, across all steps from research to waste management. And we have to think about AI as a lubricant of the operating process of all value chain, allowing us to reduce the gap between the inputs and the outputs, and so reducing our footprint on the planet. So that is good. Then, of course, we have a issue of acceptance. If we look at what is happening now with 5G, for example, I mean, this is completely silly. People refusing 5G for whatever reason, because they think that vaccines are activated. There is a relationship between 5G and COVID and so on. So we need to take into account into the equation the acceptance of the users. Of course, I think that consumers associations are going to be key. Because I think that authorities must do their part, but that's not enough. We need to reach out to larger organizations that have a more intimate dialogue with consumers, with users, and we are going to rules on education, because we need to explain kids, and through the kids, the grown-ups, what AI really is. That there is nothing to so exceptional. It's business as usual. All technologies have some upsides and some downsides. We want to maximize the upsides and minimize the downsides, and that is always the case. So, and we can do it. The idea that Hollywood is promoting of AI to happen. So we need to educate people that the idea they have from Hollywood is wrong, and effectively this is a tool, and this tool can be governed. Authorities do their part, consumers associations do their part, and education must do its part.
Okay, Stefano, thank you so much for sharing your perspective on the almost irreversible nature of AI and being a technology like other technology, raising some concerns. But are we really sure, else I turn to you as a consumer organization representative, that AI is a technology like any other? Or is there some specificity in the way in which it permeates our life, as Stefano suggested, that requires more perhaps attention, in particular because it is already present in our society? Stefano.
Has its peculiarity. Every technology has its peculiarity. It's normal. It's normal. It's not like the others. We have some issues related to liability, related to responsibility. System. So it's different, it's in the details, but the overall is the same. It's just another technology. We can use it for good. We need to maximize good and the bad parts of it. Institutions do their part, consumers unions, the associations do their part, education must do their part. That was my point. I'm not arguing.
Do you agree?
Exactly the same.
Yes, I agree that we all need to play our part. It's true, AI is something difficult to comprehend for the average consumer. How it's difficult to comprehend for some of us. It's so broad, it's so, you cannot really touch it. It's already everywhere, and it has, and sometimes you see it, but sometimes you don't. And it's very easy to say to consumers, hey, look at it, all these good things, just trust it and go with the flow. Unfortunately, I don't think it works like that. We do need to create a robust framework that creates trust, and we can do that with very specific measures. First of all, consumers are worried about their data and their privacy. Well, make sure their data is protected. Make sure that there's data minimization, that there's privacy by design and default. Make sure that consumers are in control of this data and they can take it away and go to another application whenever they want to. Create data portability, but also acknowledge the value that consumers give to AI and to the business side by giving access to their data. That's one thing. But also, what else can you do to create this kind of trust? Create accountability. Consumers are worried when something goes wrong, and nobody knows who's accountable when it comes to AI. Set clear rules. When something goes wrong, you can go to this people, this business, this instance to get accountability. Also be open and transparent. Whether it's a consumer organization or authority, somebody needs to get access to algorithms to make sure that there is no discrimination, that there's no misuse of data. So you need to have some kind of an open and transparency. Also be open to consumers. Hey, when you use their data for AI, just tell them, give them a choice. And this is also very important, give them the ability to be in control. We know from survey results that consumers want to be able to say no when it comes to the end. They might be very appealed by AI and they might embrace it and say yes to it. That's very good. But please also give them the ability to say no. And this is something we all need to work on. It's about creating a regulatory framework, but it's also about partnership. And it's, as Stefano also indicated, consumer organizations do have a very important role to play in this, to make sure that we can say to consumers, you can trust this, go ahead. But also authorities have a role to play. Basically, it's a partnership of authorities, regulators, consumer organizations, businesses, and in that case, I think when we have some clear rules and clear, robust framework, then we can guarantee all that is needed to make AI work for sustainability.
Thank you, Els. Let me turn to Diego now. The framework you're describing in quite detail is something we don't have now. Despite the fact that AI technologies are on the market, they are shaping our life, as Diego was suggesting. We currently lack such a framework, and just some parts of it, if you think about the framework for personal data, GDPR, are partly governing some of the aspects of AI applications. How far we are from having companies to proactively embrace the need from such a framework, and to what extent the framework that Euroconsumers is sketching up today is something you might be sharing in your own advocacy vis-a-vis the European institutions.
Thank you. Yes, for sure, we need regulations and rules can help. The rules on accountability, on transparency, on fairness can help consumers' trust. And I definitely think that a good regulation on AI can be a boost for the European Union to be a front runner for adopting this technology and to create consumers' trust. To build on what other speakers were saying, I would add that we should, given that, say quite directly that there is a strong differentiation among personal information of users and consumers and AI for sustainability, because the far largest amount that AI can have on sustainability has nothing to do with people data and personal data. When it comes to reducing energy consumption of big manufacturing industries, when comes to using fertilizers in agriculture, or when it used with forecasting the winds to maximize the use of turbines for creating aeolic energy. This has really little to do with personal data as users. Consumer can have a crucial role here, probably more, because, and this is a personal opinion, well, not so personal, it's quite objective and studied. When you look at what has more impact on the eating of the planet and on the environment, the consumer's contribution, of course, is important, but the contribution or the bad contribution on companies or our economic model is far more important. So consumers, of course, have a role in installing a smart thermostat in their homes to control their movements and optimize their eating system. Fair enough. But this is something that requires a high degree of trust in organization, our mine, and in the regulation. Consumers have even a broader role in asking to consume green products or to purchase products and services from companies that respect the environment. So this kind of bottom-up pressure, I think, has been immediate. It does not have any personal data impact, deciding to consume products from companies that respect the environment because they adopt artificial intelligence in their production processes is far easier from a consumer standpoint than just tracking and mapping their data. So I think that given the importance of a good regulatory framework to create trust for people to use AI, I think we definitely need also a big focus on creating bottom-up pressure to reward companies and organizations that use technology to save the environment compared to the ones that don't use it and keep polluting.
Thank you, Diego. Extremely interesting, because it leads us to one of the major takeaways of today's webinar, the idea that at the day, customers, users can actually be the driving force in pushing with their consuming power the way in which companies would be embracing AI for a green society. Lucilla, to what extent do you see this logic governing or inspiring the regulatory approach today? Will you be incentivizing, will you be rewarding companies that through the market or through other mechanisms would be somehow pushing for this kind of upgrading in their own production processes, in their own way of delivering services, AI, in order to somehow deliver products and services which are greener?
Apologies. First of all, the European Commission wants to support the more development of artificial intelligence in the European Union, because at the moment, we are mostly users of artificial intelligence that comes from other parts of the world, and there is no reason for that. I mean, we have an economic standing that should make us also leaders in terms of developments. So we support research, we support testing, experimentation facilities, and a number of measures exactly to make sure that there is more development taking place in the European Union. And we hope that these developments will also have a positive impact on the environment. Then we also are in charge of making sure that there is an environment of trust, and this is going to help the user. Now, as it was said earlier, not all artificial intelligence systems are based on the processing of individuals' data. So we have a general data protection regulation, which is mostly looking at the processing of personal data. And that framework is not sufficient for artificial intelligence, because it is very much based on self-assessment by companies, only about the processing of personal data, and not looking at how the system, in this case, the artificial intelligence system, has been developed and the training data sets that have been used and so on. So we think we need more than the general data protection regulation. When we have produced the white paper, we ran a public consultation. And in the public consultation, only 3% of the respondents told us that the legal framework in place in the European Union is sufficient. So the large majority of respondents, business, academics, citizens, various organizations, do believe that we need a further legislative framework for artificial intelligence. Now, we have done a lot of work in the Union. We had a high-level expert group, of which Stefano Quintarelli was a member, who has produced a list of principles that have just been repeated in this event many times: fairness, transparency, robustness, privacy, human oversight, and so on. And the European Union has endorsed these principles. Now you ask, how do we operationalize them? Well, the high-level group has produced a checklist. We call it the assessment list. It's available online. Developers of AI can go online and answer the questions posed in this assessment list and check if they have taken care of making sure that there is transparency, that they understand how things have been designed and have developed. On top of that, as I said earlier, we are preparing a regulatory framework that we will be publishing at the beginning of next year. And here we will pay attention to introduce requirements based on the principles of the high-level group, so fairness, transparency, human oversight, and so on, and apply these requirements to artificial intelligence systems that can be high risk from the point of view of safety or fundamental rights. So we want to introduce a mechanism that ensures the respect of existing rights in terms of safety and in terms of fundamental rights. We intend for very high-risk system to introduce the possibility to check ex ante whether the AI system is robust and accurate. And then we can also think of requirements which allow us to audit the system ex post in case harm arises. So it is a dual approach. And it will depend, of course, on the degree of riskiness of AI applications. Just one last point that I want to highlight is that we have to be very careful in not stifling innovation in what we are doing. So when we talk about introducing requirements for applications, we think very much of high-risk applications and not artificial intelligence. There are many, many applications that don't raise any concerns from the point of view of safety and fundamental rights, and they should be allowed on the market and promoted even more than they are now.
There is a question I think is addressed to you, Lucilla. I think you're a better place to reply to it. Which kind of regulation is needed for the technology itself, let's say safety of cars, and which kind of regulation is needed for the use made of the technology by companies, let's say quality of the data sets? How to distinguish? I think this is the question.
I think the distinction in this case has to be made simply on how we check things. For example, in case of the cars, we already have tests, before you put a car on the market, the car has to be tested, and there are certification systems already established, and there is a full legislation around it. Now, the idea is simply that there will be checks also made to the artificial intelligence introduced in the car that has a certain impact from the point of view of risk. So we're not intending of introducing a completely new mechanism here. We're simply intending to extend the existing checks to also artificial intelligence. Then for other artificial intelligence systems that maybe have more impact on fundamental rights, for example, recruitment applications is the typical example. Here, we just want to make sure that, for example, the training data are not biased, have a certain quality, because you don't want to get a biased outcome out of this particular application. Then in this case, you can ask the user of the application, because I think that all the rules should actually affect the person who actually, or the organization that puts the application on the market, whether it's the user or whether it's the developer. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. Well, they should be able to document the training data sets that they have used and the testing data sets. And these documents should be available and should be auditable.
Thank you very much for addressing this question and replying in such a succinct way and clear way. We are coming to an end of our webinar, but it would be extremely interesting to get a sense, since you were all pretty optimistic about the potential of AI to contribute to a greener transition, to tell us in 2 or 3 words each, what do you think is going to be the major driver, which will be the major factor that will enable this to happen? Some of you might say the regulatory framework, some might be saying company behavior, some might be saying, you know, anything. I don't want to preempt your answer. Perhaps we're going to start from Els here. What do you think would be really making the difference here, where you would make a bet?
Well, you won't be surprised maybe if I say consumers. The word innovation was dropped in a few times in the last couple of minutes, and I think our paper, our position clearly shows that we want to be a driver of this innovation. But this means you need to listen to consumers. You need to listen to what they need and develop the AI that actually will be used by them. And you need to create a trusty framework so you can guarantee their participation. So I would say consumers and partnerships with them.
Thank you. Diego? Diego, we can.
I lost you. I think I lost you.
No,
sorry.
It's okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was asking you, what do you think is going to make a difference in leading AI to make a difference for a green transition? And Els said consumers and partnership. What do you say?
I would definitely say partnership and acceleration of technology.
Okay, thank you, Diego. Stefano?
I think bottom line will require companies to use all of the infrastructure that we described so far, regular partners, turn this place. The bottom line.
You said the company's bottom line, so the economic interest of the companies to embrace the technology.
If we look at the amount of energy that we need to use to employ to produce food, we need to decrease the average amount of energy we produce to feed a person with 3,000 calories, say. In order for that to be sustainable, to be much more efficient, and companies that will turn on to companies. So I definitely.
Okay, thank you, Stefano. Ivan?
Yes, but allow me just briefly speak about the other answer, the other question, because I like rather speak about trustworthy environment than trust environment, because I think people have to trust in artificial intelligence, not in the empty space, but for the sake that is trustworthy. And in this way, I think things like bottom up pressure that or another feature, we have to make a pre-assessment. People, as we mentioned before, people have to be aware of what artificial intelligence entails. So digital literacy is the key point, the key instrument in order to achieve.
Thank you, Ivan. It's clear. So citizens, consumers, their readiness to accept that this technology is somehow shaping their life, and this could make a difference for you. Thank you very much, Ivan. Finally, Lucilla, what is your prediction there? What is going to make a difference in the coming months, years?
To put it in the market. Before we talked about precision agriculture, the farmers that use precision agriculture, they're not experts in AI. They're users, they're consumers of AI. So they have they are the companies who actually have to understand that they can trust the use of this technology. I think that Trustworthy AI, this is a very nice name that I like a lot, that was introduced by the high-level expert group, should be a characteristic feature of European artificial intelligence. So this is my wish for the future, for stimulating the uptake of this technology.
Thank you very much. I found it extremely rich and informative, our exchange today. I hope we have all been learning something, and we're going to be thinking in the coming next hours about what we have learned. Stay with us in the future. We are going to come up with many other webinars in this fall, and I just need to flag Euroconsumers Forum also coming. You'll find all the information on their website. Thank you very much to each and every speaker for being with us, and to all of you for staying for more than an hour connected, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.